So what is it about film that fascinates so many people? I find when I browse YouTube, it seems as though there are countless tutorials on how to best achieve this film look. But what is it about the film look that draws so many people in? To me, I believe that film provides that level of intimacy that helps to bridge the gap between the viewer and the motion picture. It makes the image on the screen seem more relatable and tangible compared to the hyper-realism of many modern digital cinema cameras. Not that there's anything wrong with the image quality that these digital cameras produce, but there's something very nostalgic and magical about the colors and textures of film. You know, the grittiness of the film grain and the imperfections of the film damage. The film look is something that I myself have tried to achieve for a while now. I've put out a video on how I created a film color grade, basically never fully understanding the process required to replicate this look and never taking the time to really learn about how film is actually traditionally developed. So today what I'm going to talk about is Dehancer. Dehancer is an OFX film emulation plugin for DaVinci Resolve, Premiere Pro, After Effects, and Final Cut. They already have 63 photographic and cinema film stocks for you to choose from, and even more are said to be in development. What's really amazing about Dehancer is that on top of being able to emulate 63 different film stocks, you're also given the ability to make additional adjustments to each stock itself, as you would in the photochemical development stage. Within these 63 film stocks, they include the Kodak Vision 3 film stocks and Eastman XX5222 film stock. This is actually pretty incredible because Kodak is the only company to still produce cinema film stocks. So being able to emulate these film stocks being used in Hollywood cinema, it then allows the average person more access to recreate the looks they see in movies such as Oppenheimer, Tenet, Asteroid City, and TV shows such as Euphoria and Succession. Within the Kodak Vision 3 film stocks, there are 4 different types of negative film, each that corresponds to a different ISO value. The first is Kodak Vision 3 50D, which is best suited for daytime and exterior shots, resulting in a relatively low contrast image. Next, there's Kodak Vision 3 200T, which is best suited for well-lit studio settings. It results in another low-contrast image. Then there's Kodak Vision 3 250D, which is best suited for day interior and window-lit scenarios, resulting in a high-contrast image. And finally, there's Kodak Vision 3 500T, which is best suited for scenarios with limited light, resulting in a low-contrast image. The letters D and T stand for daylight and tungsten. With daylight film, you'll typically want to have a neutral light, which is a color temperature that sits around 5500 Kelvin, whereas tungsten is more made for studio lighting with warmer tones, with color temperatures sitting around 3200 Kelvin. So I should mention that before you dive into Dehancer, it is important to properly white balance your footage to suit the desired film stock that you're looking to use. With each film stock in Dehancer, you have the option to push or pull. This allows you to mimic the developing process whereby with underexposed footage, you want to overdevelop, and with overexposed footage, you want to underdevelop. By pushing or pulling, you are controlling the image contrast and not the image brightness. This tends to be a common misconception among a lot of people. In Dehancer, this feature can help you achieve a desired creative look. Under the expand feature, this provides separate controls for both the black and white points. Oftentimes, it's beneficial to adjust this tool once you've selected your film profile. This will allow you to control any clipping that is happening in either the highlights or the shadows. The result will be our film stock fitting in the dynamic range of our color space. Next, we are able to emulate what the image would look like when printing on photographic paper. In this section, we have the option of choosing between 5 different profiles. The linear profile allows us to use the pure film profile that we selected to work with, without any influence of the photographic paper characteristics. The Cineon Film Log profile allows us to convert our image to be printed on Cineon Film Scan format. This then allows us to print negatives outside of Dehancer, which will be incredibly handy for quite a few people. The Kodak 2383 profile will provide a lot of similar contrast and tones depicted in modern movies shot on film. Once the print profile has been selected, you have the ability to then adjust the target white, exposure, tonal contrast, color density, and saturation. The target white is only available for Kodak 2383 print film or Fujifilm 3513 print film, and it allows us to adjust the temperature of the actual printing light source. The exposure slider takes an analog approach to our exposure correction, affecting the image contrast as well. The tonal contrast slider can be used to create a punchier image by increasing the value, or a softer image by decreasing the value. It's important to remember that changing the contrast will also affect the exposure, which is very typical of film. The color density slider can very quickly help us with the issue of oversaturated accents, and help to emphasize the meaningful colors without having to do a bunch of micro adjustments afterwards. The saturation slider is more of a traditional saturation control, whereby it affects the saturation of the entire image. As you can see, it is only available in the reduction way, due to the fact that too much saturation typically will degrade the film aesthetic. So by selecting the analog range limiter, this will allow you to achieve a softer image and improve the overall detail at the extremes of the tonal range. The film developer feature allows you to concoct your very own development recipe, where you can factor in variables such as shooting conditions and the creative look you're wanting to achieve. You can play around with the contrast values, which would typically be determined by the temperature of the developer. You can adjust the gamma correction, which dictates the amount the midtones are shifted towards the shadows or highlights. You can use the color separation slider, which can increase or reduce the saturation of the most intense colors first, while allowing the medium and low saturation colors to remain almost unaffected. You can use the color boost to increase or decrease the overall saturation of your image, not just the most saturated colors as with color separation. The film compression feature helps to emulate the compressed tonal range of film, allowing for your highlights to have smooth roll-off rather than clipping. This then allows for an image that is more flexible for further manipulation. The white point slider will define our clipping threshold and directly affects contrast because it determines the steepness of the clipping area. Lowering the white point value will increase the overall contrast of the compressed range. Alternatively, by increasing the white point value, this then reduces the overall contrast of our image. The tonal range slider represents the width of our tonal range. A value of 0 means that there is no compression to the range, whereas a value of 100 means that the compression affects the entire wide range from highlights all the way down to shadows. The color density slider controls the intensity of the compressed color range. A color density of 0 would be commonly found in negatives, whereas a color density of 100 would provide the maximum saturation and would be most akin to positive films. Dehancer has the ability to adjust colors in the same way that an analog color head does. This is based on the analog color correction tool in the photographic process rather than in the motion picture process. This is similarly used in printer lights, which is a special device for optical movie printing to a positive film. Both function as a means to change the color of light used for print exposure. You can successfully push certain colors in to achieve a desired look. The film grain feature in Dehancer sets it apart from other film emulation plugins. I've previously used the DaVinci Resolve film grain effect, which is simply an overlay film grain. With real film, the grain isn't simply overlaid to create the effect. Instead, the image itself entirely consists of grain. Dehancer has taken this into account for their film grain feature, which uses their algorithm to reconstruct our shot using the local color and brightness characteristics, along with a complex physical modeling of a film emulation. This provides a far more accurate emulation of how grain should be present in a positive film, with a softer grain that is less pronounced in the highlights. You have the option of selecting one of their pre-made grain profiles, or you can completely customize the grain in your image and even choose between positive and negative grain. Halation occurs when there is a reflection of bright light sources off of the film base and pressure plate, resulting in a local red or orange halo around the bright light sources, specular highlights, and contrasting edges. It can also cause very pronounced red glares in the midtones, which mostly affects skin tones. Dehancer provides 8 different halation profiles, including the ability to actually customize your own halation. This allows us to use the source limiter slider to define the minimum light source brightness that is actually able to produce halation. A default value of 0 means that even our weakest source is able to produce halation. The background gain slider allows us to set the range of the background tones on which halation becomes visible. The smoothness slider allows us to control the distribution of the halation effect between the large and small sources, visually smoothing smaller halation details. By increasing this value, it will reduce the effect around the point sources in favor of larger areas. The local diffusion slider will dictate how far the light spreads. The global diffusion slider controls the degree of secondary glare produced by scattered lights, affecting most low-contrast midtones. By increasing the amplify slider, it makes the effect more pronounced and shifts the halation color more to yellow. The hue slider is incredibly useful and allows us to better match the halation hues to the rest of the scene. Bloom results from the combination of bright light dispersion on the boundary of contrasting image areas originating in the lens of the camera and then amplified in different layers of photographic emulsion. It is expressed locally at the areas of maximum exposure and does not degrade the global contrast of the image. It mostly occurs when shooting on vintage lenses due to their imperfections, and is especially pronounced when using small format films. The film breath effect is very noticeable, resulting in an accidental change in exposure, contrast, and color from frame to frame. Film breath can be attributed to several factors, including uneven emulsion coating, instability of the camera shutter, or film development deviations. The gate weave effect is the mechanical swinging of a film strip while it's being pulled through a frame window in a film camera, projector, or video coating device. For Dehancer's film damage tool, they have actually combined thousands of unique samples from real films. Coupled with their algorithms, it produces a very lifelike result. It produces defects in your image that are subtle and tasteful, adding to our overall aesthetic. Overall, I would highly recommend Dehancer if you're looking for a very well-rounded, comprehensive film emulation plugin. Dehancer provides us with a massive 63 film stocks to choose from, and the ability to actually replicate the development process used for physical film. This provides the maximum customization for the user that you could possibly want, allowing for us to achieve our desired look. It's not overly complicated, it's very straightforward and intuitive to use, and the results are breathtaking and beautiful. The people over at Dehancer give you the option of doing a free trial or licensing it for 3 months, 6 months, a year, or you can purchase a lifetime license for the software. Again, I would highly recommend this for anyone who is wanting to achieve a very accurate film emulation or is wanting to achieve the looks they've seen in a lot of these larger Hollywood productions and replicate the beautiful colors and textures that accompany film. If you're looking to purchase Dehancer, feel free to use my affiliate code Ben10Ferris to receive 10% off at checkout. So that's all for the video today. Hope you learned something new. Let me know in the comments if you've tried out Dehancer and what your thoughts are on it. And I will see you in the next video.